Hello and welcome to another video. So it has been a couple of days since I've been doing quite a couple of builds and even started SSF, which I'll talk about a bit later. But so first of all, I was displaying my miner, and since this league I decided to take it slower, so I wasn't planning to just boss for a week to make a lot of money. I just pretty much been mapping and doing bosses as I drop them, so I still made a decent amount. But then I decided to make a mapping build, since the main thing I'm doing is mapping anyway, so may as well have a faster mapper. Now at first I didn't really know what build I want to do, and I just pretty much kept playing my miner, so I decided to just gamble some money to have some fun. So I looked at the price of ancient orbs, and they were like about 400 for the price of a Headhunter, which is a really good price since as far as I know the chance is 1 in 300, so it was definitely worth it. Now before I continue, do not gamble. It's usually not a good idea. If you really want a Headhunter, you should just save up and buy one, since you could easily just not get one at all. Now after this I decided to just do it, since if I lost all my money, I invested about 22 exalts, so I decided to just go for it.
Don't gamble, kids. I'm gonna get the chest. I'm gonna get the chest.
So as you can see, I actually did manage to get one. I got a slotted as well just before this. I played the actual audio because I was watching Quinn stream actually, and as he said, do not gamble. I actually managed to get one. Now I got extremely lucky, of course, since like I said, the odds are 1 in 300, and I got this pretty fast in. I had about 154 orbs, so could have easily gone all the way and not get a single one, which would have lost 22 exalts, but I ended up making quite a decent amount. I ended up, of course, using all the remaining ones I had, just in case, since I did end up profiting about 30 exalts anyway. And this is extremely lucky. Again, I don't recommend to do this. If you really want a Headhunter, just save up for one. I wasn't really going for a Headhunter, I just was bored and decided to do some orbs. So after that, I decided to look again at what builds I want to do. Now since the patch notes didn't really change much since last league, so it's pretty much the same builds really for mapping. If anything, there's less builds since there's no harvest crafting, so some builds are just a lot harder to get going. So also me having a shadow already leveled up, I plan to just respec that since I didn't really feel like leveling our character at the time. So first thing is, of course, Assassin Blade Vortex. It's pretty much the most cookie cutter build, the easiest template to follow really, because you can't really go wrong with it. Now personally, I'm not a big fan of Blade Vortex. On top of that, after looking at the prices, if I really wanted to juice it up with Badge of the Brotherhood and stuff like that, it would end up very expensive. Now, I could easily farm for it and get it going, but I wasn't really a fan of it since you'll have low life. I think the single target will still not be that great. Won't be immortal build, so it would just be a solid mapping build, so I decided not to go for it, and instead I went for cast on crit, which is pretty much the other side of Assassin. You either go Blade Vortex on cast on crit, in my opinion at least. So cast on crits, some pros, some cons. Pros, it's cheaper than Blade Vortex, and usually also ends up with more single target, and is more tanky. Now the tanky part is relative. I guess it depends how you build both of the characters. Now I did decide to go low life as well, for a couple of reasons. So the first one is that it's just very simple to gear, since as low life you pretty much have almost all unique items. I think only my gloves and my boots aren't unique, so it's very straightforward. You get a decent ES pool as well to begin with, so it's pretty decent to go low life. And the biggest reason I usually go low life is to get a discipline for ES on hit, Watcher's Eye, which when you start mapping with very juiced maps and Delve, you pretty much have like instant leech, like the old Vault Pact, so it's definitely really good. Now, since they changed Vitality to have life to be flat reservation, you can just run a level 1 Vitality and get Vitality Watchers for life gain on hit, so that makes that already the same. Now also, I didn't really scale AoE, which if I did it again, I would scale more AoE definitely, which would make the build feel a lot smoother. And also I would go for an explode chest, so I would not go low life, I would just go life based. I think overall life based would probably be better. It's just low life, I felt like it and went for it. And also, like I said again, don't forget to scale AoE if you plan to this build. Leave the POB in the description, but I do not suggest to follow this build, since I still was getting one shot while mapping. Of course, I'm talking about very juiced Delirium maps, but still, like, the main reason I wanted to go ES based was to be more tanky, but if I still died while mapping, there was no point really. So I started thinking about the next build. So I also started thinking of what I really want to do. Am I just gonna map, or I started looking at 5 ways. Now, spoiler alert, probably not a good idea to do 5-ways this league since they're very expensive. But at the time, I got a staff with explode model implicit, which makes running Selfcurse temp chains viable on anything but on a cultist, since you need a chest. So I decided to make a build with Selfcurse temp chains, since again it's pretty much one of my staple builds. I always go back to it, and especially if I want to farm 5-ways, it's just very strong for that. So I decided to make one, pretty much threw one together really fast. I also decided to go for Winter Orb, since again I didn't really want to just go for Blade Vortex, and you pretty much just want a spell that's projectile based helps as well, since a lot of Headhunter buffs help that. So I decided to go for Winter Orb. I mean, something different for once, and it'll still work, as you can see in the background. Now this is just a map. I had Sextants on it, I believe, but it's not a very juiced map, so it's not really showcasing the build too great, since for these type of builds you want something with a lot more monsters. And my main reason was 5-ways. I just ran a map quickly to see how it performs and how the damage felt. It was pretty much great, even the single target for a build like this. But Winter Orb usually with pretty much no damage scaling, simply relying on Headhunter, you don't get that much single target. So the build worked great, and I decided to go to 5-ways. So I decided to go to Legion, starting with a 4-way. So what you're seeing now, there's just a 4-way run, since I still need to unlock the map slot for be able to do 5-ways. So I'm building up. Now mind you, when you do a build like this, at the start, of course, you have like no resist on your gear or life almost, so you're very squishy, so you pretty much have to manually dodge until you start killing a few rares to start getting your Headhunter and Inspired Learning buffs. But then once you start ramping up, you just start running circles pretty much with resetting in between. So it was going pretty good, and as you can see there, that's the first crash already. So I'm going to be hiding my background, but every time you see a black screen, that means I crashed. So unfortunately that was the first crash already. Now I was optimistic. I was like, hey, maybe it's just one or two crash here and there. So I decided to go back in. Now the issue with a Legion, it's pretty much the only instance I think that doesn't pause the timer when you leave it. So every time you crash, you already lose time to be inside. And on top of that, every time you have to go in, you lose all your buffs. Since you have like no resist and no life, there's a big chance again that you just start dying every time you go back in. Since there's mobs already alive and you have to go to the middle. As you can see there, I pretty much crashed instantly again. So again, I could have even died that crash, maybe, since I didn't have too many stacks, but I had to go back in again. Now after this, I think I went pretty good for a while, so at least it gave me a chance to kind of see the build going once it ramps up. And it's actually really good, since I did skill a lot of AoE this time on this one, because I'm also using a staff, so I could get like the staff AoE nodes since they're pretty nearby as well. And the damage on Winter Orb isn't too bad once I get my buffs, even for single target, which was pretty much my biggest scare. When I do this, like killing the trash isn't too hard, especially since I have an explode weapon. So as long as I kill something, pretty much the whole screen will start exploding, especially with the amount of AoE I have. But the bosses, you kind of want to be able to kill them fast as well. So you want something that scales a lot with Headhunter buffs. That's why I usually try and go for something projectile based. So the build was actually pretty strong. It was better than I expected it to be, so I was looking forward to do 5-ways. And there was a couple of issues. Now, of course, the main one being that I just crash every time I go in. Later it gets even worse. I think one time I crashed like 5 portals, and then I ended up the last one just trying to survive to see if I do get a jewel. So it was pretty rough. On top of that, at this point in the league, not many people were farming with Legion Scarabs, and there is no Zana Legion this time around, so the availability of the emblems was very low, which made the prices of them be incredibly high. I think my first 5-way set cost me 8 exalts, which at that price there's no way I would be farming 5-ways, since I don't think you would be making your money back. Being that the only jewel worth something is Glorious Vanity, which was like 4 or 5 exalts. And then Asna's Chant, of course, being worth money, but they're incredibly rare. I remember going over 30 runs to get a pair sometimes, so 5-ways weren't really viable. So I started thinking about just doing Delirium maps instead, since those can be pretty profitable, especially with exalts being so cheap. A lot of the drops you get, you can just sell for chaos and then convert to exalts. So then I made my way to start preparing to start doing 5-orb maps. Now what you're seeing here is only a 3-orb map, since I just wanted to test the build around, see how it feels now. how the damage is and stuff like that. Now, for personally just doing 5 orb maps, a lot last league and stuff like that, I already know that the build probably hasn't enough damage, especially with Winter Orb, to kill the start of the map. On top of that, I'm nowhere near tanky enough, since I have like no resists and only 2k life. The start of the map would be, I think, too hard for this build. The single target on Winter would also be very lackluster to kill the generals you get in Delirium maps with 5 orbs. So I probably would go Blade Vortex at this point, unless I started to run an Aura support. Or depending on the changes I would have made, I might have stayed Winter Orb, but can't really tell now since I didn't go for it. Since what ended up happening is, even in maps, I started pretty much crashing every map. In some maps I even started crashing multiple times. I ended up bricking a map even. Now it wasn't a 5 orb map, like it was just 3 orb. I even tried taking out an Inspired Learning because I thought maybe, hey, it's the amount of buffs I'm getting, that's why I just keep crashing, but I'm not sure, because sometimes I would go for quite a long time with a lot of buffs and not crash, and then other times pretty much just enter my map and crash again. I'd tried changing the settings around. I tried to go on Vulcan, DirectX, tried going predictive or lockstep, and pretty much crashed in everything I did. So I decided to leave it for now. It wasn't meant to be. Either way, I wasn't really looking to farm a lot of maps this league anyway, since this league I'm pretty much just taking it slow, doing a little bit of mapping here and there, probably mainly going for my challenges I think at this point, and then seeing what next league brings. Now I'm gonna leave you one clip because I was in Discord with a couple of friends, and I was crashing a lot of times, so I'll just let you hear the audio of one of them, pretty much the last one. Just that's when I decided to call it a day. Now mind you, this is just jokes because I don't really get that frustrated by it. I wasn't planning to farm too many maps anyway, so if anything this just helped me to start SSF sooner than expected. So a lot of crashes later. I'm gonna leave you with the audio of my last crash because it was pretty funny. This isn't too serious, by the way, we're just joking around, so enjoy it. Also a headphone warning since part of it is pretty loud. Oh my, I crashed
really
again.
isn't even that bad.
I'm done.
Did you crash again?
Yep.
Oh, you did.
Crashed IRL.
Hey, why are you offline maining?
I fucking crashed. I can't do it. Don't laugh, dude. Like,
Here's my video, I can't make one, I crashed.
After all those crashes and being a bit bored of the league, decided to this time finally start SSF. So you can see we're in SSF league. I'm level 83 at the moment. My time played 16 hours, but it's probably like 5 hours of those or 4 hours of those I was out, so it's more like 12 hours I suppose. So I leveled pretty fast since I don't die much on this build. And I also plan to test the Summoner since I always had the plan to go SSF and test Summoner, so it's pretty much 2 birds, 1 stone. First time playing a Summoner pretty much, so it was pretty much a blind playthrough for me. I also decided to, this time when leveling, to actually do the league mechanic a little bit to see how it feels. Now Heist, and I guess most league mechanics will be like this, it's very rewarding, even in Act 1. You get a lot of transmutes and alterations and pretty much currency and stuff like that, so it will make gearing and just being able to buy all your skill gems and anything you need a lot easier, at the expense of course of leveling a bit slower, but that's not too big of a deal, especially if you're SSF because you're obviously not racing or anything. On top of that, Summoner, so Act 1 to Act 3 I used SRS together with some raised zombies. Now I don't think the zombies did much because especially in Act 1 they just died very fast until you start getting some minion life and gem levels, but the SRS itself can easily carry you. It's strong enough, especially once you link it to Infernal Legion, so it's pretty smooth. And the way Summoners go, I'd say from my experience, is they get stronger as you progress through the acts. So of course Act 1 to 3 is probably the roughest, and then once you start getting Spectres and more gem levels, it becomes a lot easier. Your summons also stop dying around there, so it's very nice to level with, also very tanky since even though I rushed all the minion nodes, I still had a lot of life at all times, so I think I went for Ravenous Horde first with this, these minion nodes. After that I think I went for that attunement to get the +1 Spectres and zombies. I think then I grabbed these nodes, and then either I went for this or I started going for these nodes over here, and then after that you pretty much go for Grave Pact I guess, and then you have all the minion nodes pretty much that I have, and after that it's just life nodes everywhere, so here Cyan life, this life, so then you have some jewel sockets and you can pick this up once you start dropping some jewels, but my jewels are pretty bad, but I had 1 point jewels so may as well put something in there. So that's pretty much the tree, very straightforward. As the gem links of Raise Spectre, Minion Damage, LE Focus, and Spell Echo. I'm using Slave Drivers, which you get in Act 5. I only got them actually when I was on like Act 8 or something, because I was using Flame Sentinels before, which also are just fine. It's not too big of a deal. Then I have Raise Zombie, Minion Damage, Melee Fizz, and Feeding Frenzy for my zombies. Now, mind you, this might not be the optimal setups, it's just what I went with, because first time playing him Summoner, so Summon Carrying Golem and Convocation. So Convocation is pretty much a recall for all your summons, so it's pretty nice when you're just shield charging down the map, and then your Convocation on your summons to you, and they will instantly attack the enemies next to you again. Now we have Flesh Offering, Cyclone, Castle Channeling, Desecrate. Pretty much automates this. I was self-casting Desecrate and Flesh Offering for a while, but may as well put them on Cyclone, so then I just right click and have everything there. Fortify, Seal, Charge, Faster Attacks, and Flame Dash to crush gaps, and this just as a movement skill. Shield Charge is actually a lot faster than expected on a Summoner, which also makes the mapping a lot faster than expected. So it's definitely a very good build to recommend. And then I have Hatred and Skitterbolts. Didn't run Hatred for quite a while, so you don't have to, but it helps for some damage. And then Enhance, just drop this, so I'm just leveling it, not really using it. As for the gear, it's pretty much just Life and Resist on every piece. Some is pretty good, but I found all of this day one pretty much in SSF. Then for the weapon, I just went for a Claw because you get life gained on hit. So every time I cycle, I'm getting life gain on hit. As for the rolls, you just want to find the Minion Essence and use it to get minions deal increased damage. That's pretty much it. I have nothing else really on the weapon. I have some resist and dex because I needed it, but that's pretty much my weapon until I get a Convoking Wand. So that's the build, not really a guide, but it's just what I got up to pretty much in day one. So I dropped an Exalt, I dropped quite a bit of currency, since I did a bit of Heist as well. I got Essence of Horror, so once I get a good base, I can try and craft a helmet with that. Some chunk in here. I found a lot of uniques, a lot from Heist as well. I dropped the Lioness Fall, and I also dropped Prism Guardian, so those are the two big uniques I found. And then also I dropped the Brother Stash, so 5 Exalted Orbs, from the first deck I opened in SSF, so the RNG is definitely there. And then the rest is just the basics, some fragments and stuff like that. As for my Atlas, pretty much just did the 4 other regions, so I have 35 completion, but I have a lot of white maps still that I can complete now, because I was target farming the maps to get my Watchstones first, so now I can do all these, and then progress to yellow maps. So again, the build is definitely something I will recommend. It's probably a starter that I might even consider, judging by how it performs in red maps, I guess. So that's probably the next goal, to push into red maps, if I feel like continue playing this at least. It's very tanky, it's a lot faster mapping than expected. The damage isn't too bad either, even for Conquerors and stuff like that, they die pretty fast. Even resist, I mean, I'm way overcapped on resist, since with the Ascendancy as well. I think here you get like 30 all res, and then you have a lot of resist on the 3 as well. I mean, I haven't even picked up these nodes, which is even more resist. So it's definitely very easy as a league starter, definitely recommend it. The only downside I guess I have with it, which isn't a big downside, but it's that once you have their passive tree and stuff, the main way to scale them is from gem levels, which on League Star, the issue with it is that no one's going to be selling a level 20 or 21 Rhea Spectre gem at day 1, since obviously gems take time to level. So you pretty much will, if you're ahead, you will have to level it yourself. So you might have to do white and yellow mass for a bit longer than, for example, on a miner, which a miner you can just buy a Tremorold, which drops pretty soon, and then you can jump straight into even tier 16s if you wanted to, because that's the only requirement really. So we'll have to see how it performs in higher maps, but so far very pleased with the build. Now as for my goals, the issue why I stopped SSF again for a bit is because I don't really have too many goals in it. I just decided to play to test out Summoner pretty much, but now that I've done that, I went back to Trade League actually, and decided to remake another Selfcurse build. So pretty much I had to rebuy most of my gear, because I gave most of my gear to a friend to sell while I was playing SSF, so he sold a lot of it, but then now I came back and I had pretty much to buy all my rings back and stuff like that, because I sold most of it. No, I'm not gonna go over the whole build, so this is pretty much a Selfcurse. I made plenty of Selfcurse guides, and nothing really changed since last league. A couple of passives and stuff move. So I'll touch pretty much the stuff that changed and how I went about it. First of all, actually, before I start this build, it's not fully like min-maxed and stuff like that. It's just something I threw together pretty fast with the least amount of effort. So I went for unique rings and stuff like that as well. So I'm using Blade Vortex since this is pretty much the easiest spell to scale. So I'm also missing an Inspire Learning. So you're supposed to put an Inspire here, but I took it out to test how the crashing is, because it might be because having too many buffs is what made the crashes. Well, it's not, because I'm still crashing without it, but either way. I went for a Fizz Conversion Watchers, which only have 40% conversion at the moment, so again, this build isn't min-maxed. You kind of want to get more conversion or just go for Fizz based. So the way I go for my curse effect, so first things first, I suppose, self-curse, you need shackles, you need chaos roots, and if you're not an occultist, you're gonna need Cospray's Will. The awakened hex does not work, it's not reliable, so you need the Cospray's Will. And then I also suggest using a solstice, because then you need 175% curse effect to get a maximum amount of your buff duration. So one thing that changed already is the quality on temp chains, the regular quality. This now gives 10% curse effect, so you already get 10% from this. Hex studs, this still gives 10% as well. Now granted, you can have corrupted gems for 23% to give you 11% each, but I didn't need a threshold of 2%, so I didn't go for it. So you have 20% here. Then I went for 2 large clusters instead of going for voices. Since now also the jewels, so since they added the one passive skill as Jewel Socket as the enchant, last league you had some legacy jewels still, but of course this league you're forced to have a Jewel Socket in them, which means that even with a 25% effect and our discourse, the most you're gonna get of one cluster is 34% sorry, curse effect, since you can't get 40 anymore, since you're forced to use a Jewel Socket. So I have 34 here, 34 here, 34 here, 34 here. So you want to roll them with at least 25% curse effect and Dark Discourse, which is the node that gives the most curse effect, 10%. And you want to, of course, also go for a 6 passive one. So then 4 times 34, I think it's 136, plus the 20 we get from our gems, so that's 156. I'm on the skill tree, so I pick up these nodes, which is 15%, so 5% here and 10% of the big node. And then I have a 5% node here, which brings me to 176% curse effect, which is pretty much what you need. It's also very good since if you use Inspired here now, this node actually counts, so it's not even that wasted. What this setup also allows you is it gives you a free Helm enchant and a free Anoint, so I went for Hurt of Ice here, and I got Blade Vertex Area of Effect from a Helm enchant, since I'm stacking a lot of AoE. So that's pretty much it. So just gonna showcase a 5 real quick. I also kept my defense screen open so you can see how fast you get resists from Headhunter. It's pretty much almost instantly, like you'll be capped resist. As you can see very quickly, I just steal some buffs, get capped resist, and you're off to go. Now mind you also, pretty much the same thing happened even with Blade Vortex. I just started crashing, if not even more with Blade Vortex. It's actually quite nice how it feels, because with the AoE, like you'll quickly see that sometimes I start running around and all the mobs are dead from all the chaining explosions and the AoE we have. Unfortunately, with all the crashes, it's still not really viable to do. 5 prices are better now since I last checked, so that's already a plus. So maybe the next patch, if crashes get fixed, I can come back to this. But for now, I don't really have too many league goals. Not sure what I want to do quite yet. Either continue SSF or just map to 100 or something like that. Maybe even thinking to just farm cemetery maps, see how frequent the Brother Stash card drops. Personally, I think it'll be a rarer than a Doctor card, since usually cards for pure currency are rarer than their currency equivalent, at least from my experimenting in the past. But again, untested, so can't really tell. So I'll think about what I want to do in the league, and probably see you in the next video.